Okay. Let's pray live stream again. Got it. There, all right. Okay. We began with prayer. We began the Paraclesi service. So now we're going to go back into our study for tonight. Last week, we had continued our efforts. Was it the calling of youth in society?
Page 48.
Page
48.
48. Oh, I was looking at the bottom. Oops, sorry. Yep, 48, number 5. Hence moderation. Okay. Nico, would you like to begin a little with page 48, paragraph 5? Yeah, you can go first. We got 2 Nicos, I forgot. Then I'll call you young Nico, big Nico. There you go. All right, go Nico.
Hence, moderation and exercise is required in order to maintain prudence. That is to say, a harmonic balance in the development of the powers of soul and body, so that the former may rule over the body and the latter may readily fulfill the commandments it is given. We have come together to celebrate the renewal of such a balanced training of the powers of the soul and body, begun anew today by the establishment of this newly formed exercise club for young people. It is establishment is evidence of an awareness of the necessity of a balanced and parallel cultivation of the powers of the soul and body, and a powerful witness to the progress of the youth themselves are quickly making. Its establishment honors the cheerful youth of Keene, who took the initiative, who made the bold decision who took the first step forward, who urged things onward. On the one hand, the group of young people takes care to ensure its own progress, gives consideration to the improvement of its contemporaries, and makes good use of the precious treasures of the youth, passing a never returning stream, thereby distinguishing itself within the community, shining among its greatest members, proving beneficial to its fellows, acquiring the necessary tools to prove itself in the stadium of activity and labor.
Okay, pause. So let's just chuckle here for a second. If you were a clergyman and you had to go to an opening of a gym, an exercise club, what words would you offer the people that are about to prepare to participate in a gym, community center, workout area? It's like,
It shows why he was a popular speaker.
I mean, not only, but this is what I think. I have 2 attitudes right now. I have 2. I either feel that people were like, my attitude is, okay, they're at the gym. Were they all dressed formally? Or was there some lightness of clothes to then begin actual working out, utilizing this new exercise club? 2, you're either going to you're going to like sit there and just hear all of this and be like, you like that figure of like your head blew, like, wow. And you're like, I just came here to work out, to exercise. This is a little too much for me today. Because when you hear this stuff, this is what they would say in lectures of wisdom of places of ancient Greece, the Temple of Solomon, Oxford, Harvard. You're talking about, this is like you'd be talking about to hundreds of intellectuals about the mind, the body, and the spirit. And here he's talking about to a exercise club, okay, in 1893, in August of 21st, on the town of Kimi, where it was on the island of Evia. Okay, so again, it goes back to like who he was talking to. I wouldn't even know how to respond if I were just in it, not even as an Orthodox Christian, because we haven't got to that part. We're going to talk a little bit more even about the soul, because now he's trying to talk about the elaboration of the connection of maintaining body and attitude, collaboration with friends, right? That's that teamwork, right? We understand. We see that in sports modern day. We're talking about here, end of the 19th century. This is profound. Now, mind you, translate in English, but imagine speaking to the high language, high education Greek. I don't know how I would take this. I would be floored. What would your feelings be hearing this from a luminary such as Nectarius, who probably in this setting did not garner the respect that he probably deserved for who he was? What is your feelings on this?
I can comment. Having been in villages, my parents' villages in Greece, when I speak to the locals, who great people, innocent, not very educated, but their mind is always on the now and what's going on with their flocks, with their harvest. They're not thinking about ideas like this, or they don't. So I imagine that there would have been a blank stare of some sort, you know.
I mean, Jim was here on Saturday when we were watching about the genocide of the Greeks, obviously in Asia Minor, the Pandians and all this stuff, from 1913, 1923. When you're looking at, there was a lot we knew of the desolation that happened and how formed and how well the Greeks of Anatolia were. But even still, when you saw the ruggedness and the village-like attitude that many of the Greeks even had of Anatolia than modern Greece. Here in 1893, this is now we're talking about, modern day technologically advanced people. I mean, regardless, even if they built an exercise club, we're talking about very, like you said, about today, to do now and stuff like that, and to have this luminary, that's what St. Octavio says, a luminary, because of not only his education, but his words and his speaking. Again, I feel dumbfounded when I think of the movie Man of God, when he was, remember, again, he was on that chapel in Evia, and he's talking to those the shepherds, right? And they have their probatan, they're just staring at him, he's teaching them and this and that, they're all like, he must lesson, what are you telling? I'm like, we're just trying to heal our probatan. You're talking about sales and stuff too. Yeah, isn't that, I think even for us, this is heavy.
It is.
And we're trying to study this. Imagine sitting there in front of him. Now, do you think you probably, hey, he didn't have pamphlets, here, read this ahead of time. It was, hey, here's the preparation. This is how he openly spoke to the people. I think it's not an admonishment, it's astonishment. I'm like, wow. I'm like,
really, but for heavy stuff, he still writes it, says it in a fairly simple way.
because then he's also trying to
That's why he's a tremendous writer. I didn't really realize how tremendous.
bring it to their level. Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, let's continue. Are we at the establishment of this club?
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead. Elias, why don't you read?
Oh, okay. The establishment of this club is a good omen for telling excellent things for Kimi, which is destined to bring forth noble and good men. Such men will prove beneficial to the city, society, and the homeland. Our ancient ancestors became noble and good men through measured bodily exercise and the parallel development of the soul's power. They became great, all beautiful and glorious, and they proved themselves most beneficial to the nation and humanity through the degree of civility they attained, and the memory they left behind is holy and unforgettable. With the program it has embarked, this club seeks to walk in the tracks of its forefathers, to come up to the level of virtue of its fathers, and to contribute to the progress and development of its homeland. This club bears within it all the necessary qualities to be strong and to achieve that end at which it aims, because its membership is composed of learned men and students, of learned scholars, and has the moral strength to be able to overcome every obstacle appearing in its path. It also feels that it is the present generation's lot to complete the work of its fathers. In the present generation, it feels obliged to act resolutely, struggling to contribute to the grandeur of the nation.
Which forefathers do you think he's talking about? Recent ones?
I think the ancient Greeks, from what I think.
Would you say ancient Greeks?
Well,
Okay,
they believed in exercise.
right. I mean, athleticism to the whole degree. I mean, I noticed, sorry for interrupting. Especially when it says they became great, all beautiful and glorious. I mean, I think of Alexander the Great. I think of all of them.
Statue.
Yeah, right?
Statues, that's the way, athletic stances.
Exactly. You go from the Spartans up to everything in every manner. Continue.
Okay, it feels that it is the inheritor of the holy obligations which it ought to fulfill self-sacrificially. It feels that this is not time for sleep, but rather to be wakeful. We alone hold aloft the banner of victory in the east. This lot has fallen to Greece.
Okay, so that's about modern day, right?
The eagerness by which all the muses attendants have labored to establish it reveals the noble feelings overflowing in the hearts of the founders and furnishes a sure pledge concerning the solidarity of its foundation and the good hope concerning the future success of the good work. As beneficial as it is great, undertaken by it. Yes, it is great and beneficial because it aims at raising up noble and good men are capable of benefiting the homeless.
Okay, all right, well, I mean, you're hearing from a hierarch of a church. Encouragement of embodiment, strength, support and this stuff. I mean, that's,
But
But
these
actually,
people
modern day.
couldn't understand, if that was in Greek. The villagers couldn't understand it at all.
But you say that,
I'm thinking a little bit more that this might be more, when it's talking about an exercise club. It might be more of an elitist exercise club where I'm thinking there's some education to these.
Yeah,
Because-
shepherds don't need exercise.
Yeah, I think this is an attitude where almost like a challenging of maybe, you know, I don't compare this exercise club to, possibly, but don't misquote me, almost like a military school academy, where even though it's not military background, you're having young adult men, whether it's high school or older, in a more athletic arena, but it also matures teamwork, adversity, struggle, like, you know, the embodiment of the old and applying it to this one. So because you hear them like continuously about how it benefits the homeland, how it shows so that we are lifting this banner of Greece and what it has fallen upon us. Now the generation now carry this and lift it up even higher. Pretty interesting when you think about this historically. This again, the whole aspect of this not coming from a lay person. This is from a hierarch of the church. He was a hierarch at this time. He was a bishop, exiled already from Pentapolis, from Alexandria. And he said to his people, my God, I'd be doing triple takes. I'm like, what is he saying? Is he really saying this to us? Marita, why don't you continue? Gentlemen. Oh, go ahead.
Our last point, the idea of an exercise club to me is kind of strange. When I think about that time period, I'm thinking my grandparents and my great grandparents, they're living on farms. If they had the idea of, here, going to the gym, they'd be like, are you nuts? It's like my whole life is the gym.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all I do all day.
Right.
So,
Interesting. Great point. Yeah,
On the other hand, the rural town that I was stationed in, we were traveling groups of actors, or a traveling group of musicians, and they come from Thessaloniki or Athens. And what they did, people would get real excited. They put on like their Sunday best.
Yeah.
And they said, are you going? Oh, yeah, I'm going. Everybody was, I was kind of surprised that they would just kind of get off the tractor. You know, that they dress up like their Saturday night polka, where they would really try to show off. And that somehow they enjoyed the sophistication of that.
wow.
Like, hey, we're not hillbillies.
Yeah, true.
We're real people.
That's a good point. That is a very good
But
point.
do they know how to read or write
Regardless, at least they were able to watch the show and
the show? But
All-
this lecture,
correct, but offer a presentation of what he said, that we're human too, or we have a place.
Culture.
Yeah, we're cultured.
somebody.
Yeah, we might not know it, but we're cultured. Kind of, yeah. Who said it? It kind of reminds me like the Beverly Hillbillies. You know what I mean? Like when you see them and they're like going, they all try to act like about you see them wear like a suit, but then they're all acting silly or whatever. Or Horyani, as we would call them, village like, but
worse,
oh gosh, I know, but it's
she can afford a better head.
true. True. It was the comedy of the show, so.
Yeah, you would be driving the tractor the next morning.
Yeah, exactly. Back to the routine. Yeah, exactly. Gotta be up 4 a.m. Got work to do.
It wouldn't be running a tractor, it was spotted grease.
Yeah.
And old grease, it would be a mule.
Mule, right. Good point. Go ahead, Marita, gentlemen.
Bodily exercise and spiritual development are the axes around which perfect education and perfect formation evolve. And from these fellow happiness, glory, and greatness. The man who is cultivated on both planes will be happy. A man who stands out, who thinks big, who accomplishes big things, who is strong and capable of every undertaking, who is beneficial in all situations. This is because a cultivated intellect puts forth new ideas as from a deep furrow, while a fit body is able to act in the wide open stadium and make these ideas concrete reality. Offering his own flesh and bones, showing that, as Philo says, continual training produces firm knowledge, and routine in this increases experience. The labors undertaken out of long-standing habit are less arduous. How can men thus prepared and bearing such weapons into the stadium with them, not have as their companion the hope of a glorious future? How can we not expect the best things from such discerning youth? How can we show even the smallest hesitation in light of the great benefit expected from such a club, especially when we see the mind considering most excellent things, and the body tirelessly doing those things well considered? Yes, they who are fit in both regards bear with them the ingredients of an auspicious future and a glorious life. Because according to the wise Aristotle, from this fellow's prudence, which is the token of the soul's health and the mother of all virtue. Since all virtues exist collectively in prudence, if moderation is indeed a virtue, then prudence is in moderation. And therefore prudence is moderation. What is more honorable than such moderation? What man is more worthy of respect and more sound of conduct than he is sound-minded? What is more seemly than a virtuous youth? What is more useful? Virtue alone is up to every task. It alone is able to raise up great statesmen, good citizens, and mighty soldiers. Virtue is a formative and shaping power, forming and shaping those who love it, raising up dexterous men able to meet the needs of social life and making them truly happy. Hence, we may thus understand the Stagirite philosopher's great enthusiasm for virtue, the boundless honor he ascribes to it, and his extraordinary hymn of it.
Okay, let's pause there. So this long paragraph really enhances, again, his education of philosophy, his education of the humanities, and as well as of ancient philosophers such as Philo of Alexandria, that it gives us some incredible insight about how in no manner is even connecting God to the situation, yet giving them an authoritative exertion, encouragement about how we are called to bodily exercise that also develops the spiritual exercise. Because then I think in the future, I think that the goal would be of this is for him to apply it to a opportunity to grow into a spiritual being that is also saying that if you nurture the body, you also have to then nurture the spirit. I think that's kind of like an undertone that we are getting from this. And I see that often, especially in the church, but when I speak to people, regarding the feast of the year, especially about Lent and everything else. Remember, everyone's always arduous about the food, right? Lent, food. And I said, yeah, but why aren't we focusing on the spirit? Why are we focusing on prayer? Why are we focusing on worship? Why are we focusing on almsgiving? All those efforts are spiritual challenges that allow us to grow stronger. And then if you notice, what I tell people is once you do them, you get used to it. And it actually becomes a norm. The comedy of this one is the example of a general Christian. A general Christian is called to serve and give. You are called to serve and give. It is foreign to us because we do not do that. We do not do that on a regular basis. We do on a, highlighted basis. Christmas, Thanksgiving, right? Holidays, and they are highlighted days. And so therefore we will give or amplify our sense of giving then. And I always say that I sound like a broken record. But November, December is actually the worst times to give to people. Why? Because everyone else in the world is giving something. It's the end of the year. People are either giving additional, they find stuff, whatever. Look at the mid of the year, the beginning of the year. That's the greatest need. And especially in most countries, the beginning of the year, it's a time of uncertainty. January, February, March, in every country, there's uncertainty. Why? You don't know how well the year is going to be. Are you going to have good crops in the spring? Are you going to be able to even have land to prepare in the spring for your crops in the fall? You don't know. So why do you think that they don't give as much in January, February, March? Therefore, the call to give is called to give continuously and unceasingly. But we don't see that because as we don't take care of ourselves naturally, I tell people, like, if someone works out and they work out 5 days a week, I say, great. Why can't we do for 5 days a week prayer? Why can't we focus on 5 times a week to give alms? You can find 5 different ways to give alms in a week. It doesn't have to be the same thing every week. The next week can be something different. There's always opportunities. The question is, there's an attitude, there's an understanding. And I think the 2 words that are missing in our lives, so that why we don't participate, are priority and desire. Do I desire to give? Most people don't. Why? Because you usually don't get anything. Now, when they do give, and they see that it's helped someone, they feel what? I feel good, right? Oh, Back, right? Yeah, okay, good. The best part is that passes. You can't hold on to that, oh, I feel good, right? Because it'll pass and you're like, oh, back to the routine, right? Oh, I need to work, I need money. I was like that too, especially in college, post-college. Remember when I give something to someone, oh, and it's like, okay, I know I did good, right? I helped them, but then I'm like, geez, now I need more money, I gotta pay more bills. And then the one thing I think I've realized as an adult is that what's the point? I'm gonna have bills the rest of my life, so keep doing what you gotta do, because regardless, whether you have money or you don't, you're always gonna have bills. So that's how I kind of resolved it with myself, because even with our stewardship, myself and President, we pay stewardship as well too. And we try to give to be an example. And we give an amount, and you know, it's a challenge. It's a challenge because why? We have 3 children. President and I were just talking about this a week and a half ago. You know, for youth activities, you know, in the past people used to love them, especially like in Chicago and in urban centers, because they're usually offered free by the park district, right? Chicago Park. Now you gotta pay $150 for this one, another $100 for this, another, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 3 kids, it adds up. Where am I gonna find this money? What am I gonna do? X, Y, and Z. And it's also because then you also don't want them just to become what happened. The problem though is, you know, we're not in a world now where I could take them to work and they can work as well too. Obviously, you can't throw them at work at a young age, okay? And if not, because of our society, it encourages an attitude of mindless zombieism. What's mindless zombieism? It's when you throw a thing in front of them and just let them be, right? This thing can keep a kid happy an entire day, from morning till night. They can be on here as long as it says power the entire time. They'll find something to do for those 12 hours from 7 to 7. But then the problem is what happens there. They become mindless zombies. They don't know how to interact. They don't know how to do anything. And then that's why, then you got the other spectrum of parents' issues. Okay, we'll finish up on this topic, but it just shows a struggle. Because if I'm not practicing and struggling and putting the effort, I fail. The problem then comes is then, if I do this, okay, here's one easy out. The other easy out that many parents do that's also bad, over schedule their children. You know, children, literally from the morning till they go to bed, are doing something. I'm talking about, okay, school, right? Oh, no break after school, gotta go to practice. Then you gotta go to clinic. Then we'll find dinner in between, and then, oh, you got this one for another hour and a half. We'll come home, shower, great, and go from there. Because the other attitudes, like I look at my oldest son, who's now 8, 2nd grade, he has no homework. I don't remember in 2nd grade not having any homework. It might have been minimal, but like he has none. None. Every time I ask, I feel like my dad was talking to me, but in high school. Do you have any homework? No, I'm all good. I already did it. This one is 2nd grade. He's like, no, I'm like, dude, that's impossible. You have to have homework. And the only thing that he has like a pre-test, like a spelling test, and he does it. And then he has to practice those words for the Friday. That's it.
Maybe he does it in school.
No. It's part of the education system now. That homework is not a necessity priority. Or then if she gives them some take-home stuff, that's like on the adage of the teacher. Other teachers don't have to. It's quite profound. Now that's at a young age. I don't know, I'm assuming junior high, high school, it's a little bit more intense. But like I talked to the other kids and, you know, some have high anxiety and some, it's like, I don't see the middle. The heart, that's impossible, right? We all want to be balanced. That's with everything in our lives, the middle. But I have kids who have really high anxiety. When's your finals? Oh, in 2 months. Who cares? That's in 2 months. No, you don't get it. Okay, all right, that's one. And you got other ones who have, it's the next day. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Great. You know where Goya? What's everyone up to? I don't know. I got finals tomorrow, but everything will be fine. Me, I be up till like 2 a.m. I gotta read, cram everything in, and go from there. But that's where we are now. But it shows the swings, the spectrums. We're here. Let's finish at this point. He's trying to give us in the virtues a true balance of physical, okay, and then of spirit, philosophical and spiritual balance. And that's important because it shows that if you're gonna handle this issue, which you want to exercise, and you have this great lot that has been given to you, well then you're not going to put it in the dirt. You're supposed to call to cultivate it. And that is a hint, obviously, to what? The parable that we heard of the talents, right? And that one's brought up. I just had someone bring up that miracle about the talents. And it was very powerful because most of us immediately act like the person where he gets the one and then hides it away. Because either A, they're afraid to squander it, or to invest it poorly, or maybe get it stolen, because it's only one, right? That's the only one you have. So it's like that, like, it's, you get the golden ticket. What are you gonna do with it? Oh, safe deposit box, I can't let it happen to it, right? But if you were told that you were supposed to bring it back with interest or put effort into it, that's the problem. The other ones are like, oh, they got 5, they'll get 5 more, who knows, we'll see. If they got 3 more, at least they got some interest, right? But they had to make the effort to get that interest. If you don't do that,
There's a member of church who calls that the capitalist sermon. You know.
See, not a
And of
capitalist?
course, it was written by a tax collector, so.
Isn't that funny? That's pretty funny. That's a good point. So, all right, let's continue. Nico, why don't you go into the hymn of what we are hearing here? From
Overture,
Staggerite, the philosopher.
okay. Overture toilsome for the generation of mortals to achieve the fairest prize that life can win. For that beauty origin, it were doomed glorious, and alas, even to die and to endure fierce, untiring labors. Such courage dost thou implant in the mind, imperishable, better than gold, dearer than parents of soft-eyed sleep. For thy sake, Hercules, son of Zeus, and the sons of Leda, and their watching the task warliving, pursued thy might. And yearning for thee came Achilles and Ajax to the house of Hades, for the sake of thy dear form, the nursling of Paternaeus too was bereft of the light of the sun. Therefore shall his deeds be sung, and use the daughters of memory will make him immortal, exalting the majesty of Zeus, guardian of strangers, and the grace of lasting friendship.
Here's the next paragraph.
Guys, I didn't understand anything of that,
Of what?
the whole thing.
Why?
Strange to hear
Oh,
that from
very
a 3/4 Orthodox priest.
I know. Mind you, Victorius is saying this. Tadasu. Tadasu, again, think of this. What
And
it is.
in Greek, is
And in Greek.
ancient Greek.
Yeah.
How people will understand it.
I thought that was, it wasn't a classic.
Ancient.
Yeah, I think it was even in ancient Greek. Even
Ancient,
continue, Nico, the attainment of this virtue.
Attainment of this virtue is pursued by this very exercise club, which calls upon other organizations to strengthen the bonds of friendship and continual conversation, which seeks to foster brotherhood among young people, to disperse base antagonism and ill will, break young people away from vain and unprofitable pursuits, to lead them into the arena of preparation, foster noble struggle, to increase the love of honor, cast out laziness, which gives rise to despondency, languor, indifference, and every vice. To raise up strong men who will uphold the customs of the home.
Okay, continue.
This is the club's aim. The lack of such clubs is an indication of a lack of a sense of their necessity and efficacy. A sign of imperfect development. The lack of such clubs means that young people are deprived of all the aforesaid license of exercise.
Is this more like a YMCA? Or 4-H club? You know what I mean, like a Boy Scouts? I mean, to give this formation and and what they're supposed to do and nobility, love of honor.
It's like a military.
What?
Like a military.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really, I wonder, and I don't even know, like, I don't know, obviously the pretext. Did they? What was the pretense of them asking to come say this? Was it just a bless? If I had a bishop come to bless something. And it was a secular place, and he started going into this, I would have probably just like given up, like, all right, I'm out of here. You win. I don't know what joke this is, if I'm being pranked, but
There's an awful lot of small villages in Greece where the intellectual city is Greece, so.
it's so true. It's really profound. It's really profound. I'm sorry, Nico, continue.
What I get from this also is at the time there was, I mean, they just got liberated 70 years ago.
Yeah,
So I think young men to get them in that homeland, defend, be, as prepared as possible is very common.
and don't forget, there were wars continuously breaking out,
And they were, yes.
leading up to the Otto-Greek War, you're leading into other ones as well too.
Yeah.
But before the Balkans and all that stuff, so it's like, it's not like this is all just, oh, hey, everything's hunky dory, let's start working out. You know,
people brother.
Yeah.
This was during the time it's Turkish. Take for 1890,
Yeah,
like we saw in the film there, it was during the time with the Turkish and the Greeks. The Turkish did the Greeks.
yeah. I
So
think,
they were completely lost. There was nothing they could do.
and mind you, Evia and Attiki, Greece, obviously got liberated a little bit later than obviously Peloponnese. Before even Thessalonica later on, I mean, come on,
Yeah, I think in 1893, Thessalonica was still a Turkish school.
is that pretty profound?
Hume's got liberated in 1912.
Yeah, so both, yeah, same with Thessalonica.
But I like, maybe it loses something in translation.
I don't know,
How you say club in Greek?
Let's see.
We don't have,
Well, I mean, this was written in Greek, so I mean, you know.
in Greek. But club, what is a club?
Let's see. Let's see.
Give me.
it could be, you don't know,
They know the word.
you know.
Apparently they had them in the cities and.
Of a new exercise club in the coastal town of Gimi, I would assume so, right?
Let's keep those through.
Yeah, less tennis, less, you know,
Could be,
club.
it could be,
We say club today, but back then I don't think they knew what club was.
it's also the translation of club. Club is was an organized gathering place, right?
Yeah. Leslie, that's exactly
Yeah, that's what Jim's,
what it is.
It's like a gym.
I imagine you could.
In TV, yes, Leslie is something else.
Well, they were creating a Leslie athletic club.
I think the athletic means to exercise your mind, your soul, your spirit. It's
They were
not
definitely talking about.
just your
this
body.
this one's definitely talking about physical though.
Yeah.
Leia organismo for the body.
But they work in esta jorapia with plenty of physical.
Yeah, true. Again, there's a lot that we can look into this. I think when we think about the big picture, I think that's why with each thing that he says, that's why I think it makes it more profound. You're like, wait, and how's he speaking to these people? What's he speaking? Like, to whom are these people? Are these educated? Now you'll
They're
see,
not philosophers.
no, because then in the next one, you'll hear him now talking again to the Rosario school in Athens, and you'll see him
Right.
speaking another education, but it's pretty profound that, here, look at the end, he says, everyone knows what beautiful fruits these bear, communities understand the importance and necessity of such clubs. They come from civilized Europe, has so many of these exercise clubs that their number exceeds the number of schools. I am convinced that this exercise club, Leodo, too will receive similar support from the local civil authority, the politicians, the community in general, most of all from the wealthy. So they may travel uninhibitedly toward the arena of struggle and ultimately fulfill the great end appointed to it. May it be so. Wow, interesting. Very
Some
interesting.
people A lot of trouble. That's very common. You used to have a lot of boxing clubs.
Right?
In the big cities.
Right.
Get kids off the street. You don't see
Right.
much of that
Yep.
anymore.
That's a good point
It's more
too.
like the YMCA now.
It could be, you know what I mean? Like that, it's an organized place. Very true. Let's just go a little bit, I want to go a little bit farther down, not into the Greek philosophy, because this is really heavy stuff, the next one. I actually want to go farther down to page 69. I was reading a little of this as well too in another time. And I think this is what we're gonna go in for, not next week, because next week is
Análise. Para mí es análise.
hold on. Sorry. Yeah, next Wednesday's on Ellipsos, Esperino, so no, nothing next week, we'll meet the following week. I think we're gonna have a couple more weeks, and we'll probably finish up the rest of the book then, okay? But I wanna go into this one just a little bit, we got another
We
15
have
minutes.
Esperino here.
No, analysis, we're going analysis, one analysis. No, then you go to the church for your tazi, especially if it's a despotiki yorti, when it is analysis. It's not appropriate for us to do it, especially we are sister parish of Ascension. Being about 20-25 minutes from there, so. All right, so the necessary attributes of a spiritual shepherd. Now, this one, reading into it is excellent because this is like a Q&A. You'll see the other pages, like there's questions and the answers. So it says here in the pretext in the bottom, the present text represents a small section of one of St. Ignatius's larger, more important works, the Pastoral Handbook. I have this book. I have it in Greek, and there's a version being made in English as well too. But it was published in 1898 during his directorship of the Rosario School, aimed primarily to students for the use as a textbook for pastoral theology. It has been argued that its contents being the same, it's aligned with the great fathers of the church, who penned works in the priesthood, such as Chrysostom, Gregor Theologian, and Saint Simeon of Thessaloniki. This particular excerpt focused on the education formation of priests, placing a perhaps surprising emphasis on the acquisition of learning of all kinds, albeit without compromising spiritual cultivation. Now, I told people many times, this is not touting myself. I have nothing to tout about myself. But my father from a young age always used to tell me, whatever I study and how I study, I should be like a sponge. Soak it all in. You can then filter it out. Well, you don't need to filter what you need to filter out, but soak it all in. Matene, nas podasis, na catalavis, na sinificis, apola, everything. That's I remember, and I leave that to be with me all the time. So like even when I'm reading, I'm doing stuff on my phone, I read different things. I read one person's opinion on one thing, I study another, I read this church father, I read this one. I try to go across the whole spectrum so I can gain more. Not that I'm going to become better, but so that I can apply it to the betterment of my priestly ministry and my vocation. And as well as, yeah, then I think naturally I also get benefits of it. So it allows me for the understanding of discernment, to discern what might be right, what might be wrong, whether I have a correct intuition or maybe a misunderstanding on something, and how not to act on it immediately, vocalize and condemn. But maybe I'm like, hey, did I look at the whole picture? Have I studied? I think of those attitudes like, let's think of politically. When Congress puts together all these bills, right, that they write, Bill SRO 201, you have to read through the whole thing. I promise you, the average American, it's got to be what? 5%, my opinion, reads what bills actually state, including of small fine print when they're brought up either into Congress, both national and local. I truly believe it. Because unless they do, and they look, we're talking about us as voters, okay? Because you have to look why I always ask the question, why is this presented as a topic? There was a recent one that came out, I just saw it yesterday, it blew my mind. City council, no, was he a former city councilman here, local Chicago? He goes Chicago now became a congressman for the state, or maybe a state senator. Forgive me for what exactly. He proposed a state bill that then has to get approved nationally to convert the Dan Ryan into a tollway. Okay, so it was like step to step. Here's the reason why though. And it says, is this for old tolls on highways are used so that those funds can be replenished to then to fix, enhance, and modernize those same roadways. The best one though is his reason was not for that for the Dan Ryan, to curb the gun violence on the highway. I quote, because they read it and I saw the news clipping. I was floored. So I said, do you really think?
They're gonna worry about paying the toll.
Hold on, I said the exact same thing. They're gonna fly off of 57th Avenue on the ramp, shoot someone, like, oh, I got hit by the, I didn't pay the toll, oh, I can't shoot now. Can you believe that? It says it in there, to curb the violence that is now enhanced on the streets of Chicago, plus with the highways of the Dan Ryan. Wow, I was floored. If that's the excuse, wow. We have now sunk to new lows. If you want to admit and say because we have a floundering pension, we can't pay for this, we can't pay for that. Okay, I'm not in full agreement, but to say because that's gonna curb highway violence.
I never drove.
Although I gotta
that
say,
Ryan.
I lived in Indiana.
I promise you, I used to see people on the,
I did Dan Ryan every day.
I used to see people on the Skyway still fly through the Skyway toll. They would either go through those arms.
Yeah.
Those have probably been most changed by anyone. They don't care. They fly. And now that everything is electronic, without it, do you really think they're gonna wait to go at home until they get a bill that says you owe this much or whatever for an unpaid
Maybe
bill?
the stolen car anyway.
He obviously did not read the federal law.
Well, no, because
390, because the way to change an expressway into a tollway there has to be new construction, like more lanes, or it has to be extended.
You
It has
know
to be
why they did
something.
it?
So 390,
You know why they did
so
it?
they're building, hold on, so they're building 390 here, or they're
There used
finishing
to be
390.
three, But because they put extra lanes and they put extra.
You know why they
entrances,
did it?
that counted
This
as
is
a
their
total.
way of doing a head tax.
Yeah.
Because, you know, all the
Ah.
people that are doing the Dan Ryan are people who live outside the city who are coming to work in the city.
Mm.
Well, it also
Just like I
creates
did
a
for
lot of
years.
contracts for some very.
Like
old
years.
people.
Well, true, think about the problem people who live in Northwest Indiana and still work in the
Which
city.
is exactly where I lived, and that's exactly what I did. I
Yeah.
did it year after year.
Interesting,
after year.
very good point, but can you believe they put that as a definitive reason for wanting to add the toll? Add, convert it to a tollway?
It's a good way to kill somebody that you need to get rid of. I'm certain that's the reason for it, because you follow them and if you shoot them on the expressway and you get off at the next exit, there is no way you will ever be traced. That's why it's so hard to be able to catch
Correct.
these guys.
Correct,
So it's well thought out. It's not accidental and it's not stupidity and it's not just plain meanness.
right,
There's usually a reason. Unfortunately, as a detective told me very early in my career, you gotta teach these guys how to shoot straight so they can kill each other. Because otherwise they shoot all over the place.
And they hit others.
People, and that's what happens.
that's an excellent point,
Gun training for games.
yeah, I mean, yeah, Chris,
Thing number one, I was in Vegas. Over there, we don't have no head tax. There's, everything is paid through the gamble.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, you know,
if they did
What
this
is
in
Jim?
Illinois. At least they give it, we're the highest paid taxes around, just about. I know a person.
I really, by the way, hold your
Tax
point.
is not income tax.
Hold on, I personally though. Cannot see another state. Or city. I mean, I see San Fran and maybe a few other, but Chicago plus Cook County, I think of the county. We're so, it's such a high. Heavy tax, when I say heavy tax, especially with property
The
tax.
property taxes.
Plus, let alone with some other things, it's very difficult. I mean, it's not. Even if they like NOR, they change this, I'm like, they're very heavy, they're not sustainable.
Yeah,
It's,
but you know, in Indiana.
yeah, but no one lives in them anymore.
You know, but in
I mean,
Indiana,
especially the offices.
in Indiana, they don't have as much tax, but they have fees all over the place.
True,
You know, and like to register a car in Indiana used to cost me $1,000 a year,
what,
you know, or something. It was a lot.
really?
You know, I mean, when I moved to Illinois, I was paying 125 or something like that. When I was in Indiana, you know, and I had, you know, two cars, I was paying like $900.
But also depends on the village, like for instance, if you come by
Yeah,
Gallatin.
And there,
you have-
and there's a lot of people, you know, who register their cars in Illinois, so they don't have to pay them in Indiana.
How about that?
You know,
Yeah.
of course, then if they get caught, the cars get compensated.
Yeah, but how about that? So Chris, sorry for interrupting, you were saying, you're finishing your thought.
The thing is that out there, everything's gated. I mean, they get so much money to the gamble that it pays for everything it is. Another thing I was just bringing up there, we were talking about during the times. I take during the 40s and the 50s. How many women worked during the time?
Correct.
During the time I was raised, some I never worked. I mean, the reason is, I'm not working. They had to take care of the kids.
Uh-huh.
They had to pay for, you know, take care of all the stuff. And the thing is, now, what is it? 80%, 90% of women work there.
Uh-huh.
And the reason they work is they gotta pay for that second. So,
You know, my mom worked and, you know, we needed.
It's better to go to the office than work at
And
home.
there was, you know, and there was a lot of people like that.
But we try, do you know how hard it is? Do you know how hard it is to have a stay-at-home mom? I mean, you truthfully have to be at a very high end of the pay scale.
yeah,
Unless it's a great, like we said, unless it's a really high pay scale. And I mean, because when you think about it, it's so arduous. And then you also have to put in the mindset of travel. You know, say you're closer or far away from your work. What about car expenses? Cars now are outrageously expensive. We see gas, yeah, they say electric and everything else are still expensive to everything. It's quite confounding, you know, how difficult it is to just kind of get by. That's why it's not even just with the exodus of Illinois. But like, whenever I have relatives now, I have friends who are like, especially the flourishing one, especially is like with Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee, because of what Tennessee offers is not just because of some cheaper attributes as well too. Nashville has progressed. Memphis has its own progression as well too. I know there's always situations here and there, but it has a centrality where wherever you need to go, it's not as bad as if you are either too far north, too far west, or too far south. From Tennessee to go to either like a coast, go down, you're talking about what? Maybe 7-8 hours. So that's not too bad. You still can then also have the opportunity to come back to Chicago and other things. And then the lifestyle that people express on there, they say it's obviously more joyful in the sense that the weather is also tepid. In other words, it doesn't have extreme colds, and even the heat can also be somewhat normal, like how we have in Chicago. 90 in humidity, but not extremes like in Florida where it might be 100 in humidity, or it won't be freezing like how it might be up here. So now that's where that's what I've seen with what COVID really unleashed. I think because out of many places, not just Chicago, many places people have wanted to change because it's the attitude of quality of life. If whether I'm sick or whatever, I got to be somewhere where I'm enjoying what I'm doing or enjoying where I'm at. And the problem is now modern day, even in suburbia Chicago or in Chicago, it's just not happening that way. And it sadly has those difficulties about what we deal with and how do we live our day-to-day lives. But that's a real problem now, because why does that affect us? It affects us as a church. It affects us as communities, because naturally we are organically not growing as Orthodox Christians. Some places, I just posted something on our social media on Instagram that today the Wall Street Journal posted an article about Orthodox Christianity flourishing in the Americas.
Oh, really? Okay.
There's a link on it, you should read it. And it has some highlights, but where are all the priests who are talking?
Go for it.
Well, no, one is the Greek Orthodox priest in Cumming, Georgia. Oh, he has many converts. The other one is that's Barnabas Powell. The other one's in Bluff City, Tennessee. And then you have another one that's in the west, but you don't hear of anything in the north. And the north really has its own problems in general, let alone for Orthodoxy. And I think it's because of, but those the Bible Belt people, I think because of COVID and everything else, are trying to find a real, and what they also highlighted was not only the understanding of like what they believe about the faith, but an exponential attraction with conservatism. In other words, because they see the Orthodox Church and they see it traditional, they then apply it to an attitude of being conservative as well too. And then
Roll call is growing.
oh yeah, real quick, I mean,
Because they grab entire conservative Protestant parishes.
And make them-
I think religiously we are conservative, and I think that's good,
well, I think what I say with it is I try to take out the word conservative and I then say to the word of traditional.
Traditional.
Because that's why I try to say, like, we haven't changed. Or when we do change, it's an evolution of growth.
Yeah.
Because it's not like this is what's going on in society, let's now change with it. What it says is this is what's going on in society. How can we serve society in this manner? Is it possible? Now, at some points, society could be like it was before Christ, could be like Sodom and Gomorrah. Then what are you gonna do? Right? That's a different story. But
You were talking about Willow Creek, and I remember at work, there was a whole bunch of people when I first started working there who were Willow Creek people. None of them are still on Willow Creek.
It's such a fad.
Yeah,
It's like a revolving door.
It's a revolving door,
That
the
is
thing is,
good, they
all my
charge.
friends who are Catholic are still Catholic.
To me,
yeah.
Ilya, to me, with love, I say to people, I cannot comprehend how a Greek goes to Willow Creek. Sorry, not because of the church.
It's not a church.
Pardon my language. Greeks don't like the tithe. They demand you to tithe. I mean, do you know what it is for a Greek to show them their income tax and how much they have to tithe?
Mormons too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if I
that's
were to
what-
tell anyone in our church, epanastasi. They should do that as something. I'm like, okay, today's tithing Sunday. I will ask all of you to bring in your end of the year income taxes. I'd like to know what your income was. And as it says in here in the Bible, your first 10% you must be offering to the
10%.
church. I don't even think there'd be words. I think the gas in the air would be profound.
We came from a culture where the government paid for the
Really,
church and then they
really
taxed you.
Correct.
And you didn't realize you were paying for their
Tax
tax.
Right.
evasion is a-
So they came here and said, what, the church needs money, the church
Yeah.
has money.
It's funny, it's quite funny. Well, then also don't forget too, for the church in Greece, they were also the largest property owner. And then, and they also have a lot of the resources as well too. But what I try to tell people is,
It's government there,
what?
it's part of the government.
Correct, but they also own, because especially, because of the instability. Because of the instability of the Kratos for so long, people will then entrust it to the churches because they have more trust in the churches than any established government, whether king, right, democratic, during the Civil War, you had the junta and all this stuff, it just showed the instability and the lack of opportunistic trust into them. So the church would then naturally just do that, but that's also because of what was going on. And then truthfully, during the Ottomans, that's the only ones who will allow them to have anything, right? So then if they had anything, they would just say, okay, but that's to the max.
The taxes for the Ottomans.
Correct, right? Don't forget that either.
In Asia Minor, if you were not Muslim, the Sultan used to get more from you.
Yeah,
So that's why the Sultan used to like the Greeks and anybody out there, the Jews.
right.
And when they threw the Sultan out, Kemal, who looks more of Greek or German than Ottoman, Kemal Ataturk went against. And of course, we're the cause that we went to Ankara, and France, England, and Russia, they didn't help us.
Yeah.
Because Venezuela.
Listen, the bottom line, we saw it in that documentary, so which talking about from the documentary, we saw about the genocide in Greece, lethal nationalism, which was a very moving one. Sadly, it was the wounds that are evident. We know it. We know because both of us, if we have any Greek roots. The problem is the world doesn't know the details of it. Sadly, we know many times, especially
Because the witnesses died.
the witnesses have died. The Turks have also tried to squash it in every opportunity that they
The
can.
government.
And hold on though, even our governments and other governments too, they want to almost turn a blind eye. But I think the worst one realistically that always frustrates me, but it just shows because everything is about the final aspect. It's about the almighty dollar. It's always about the money. Because look at Cyprus. I mean, when I look at Cyprus and I see where it's at, how it is in that frozen state, especially the northern part, it's so disturbing. Because then so I see what's going on in Ukraine and Russia, and obviously the amount of flood that they're putting into it. Now, mind you, we have to talk about that's 50 years ago, obviously with the invasion in Cyprus, but no one batted an eye, and you can bring up every excuse. You heard with Kissinger. You heard about Vietnam, post that stuff, this and that or whatever. I think sadly it was more like an attitude of either who cares or we got bigger problems to deal with. And I think that was the sad part of it, because then when they had NATO established then and all these other entities and United Nations, stuff like that, and to not bat an eye and then to see just a general occupation that they stole our land. But here's the problem. They would define themselves as hypocrites. Why? Why would these powers to be define themselves as hypocrites if they intervene with the Greece and Turkey thing with Cyprus?
Maybe it was something.
Well, which one? That was the biggest one.
Iraq.
No, way before that. Go right after World War II.
England?
Korea.
No,
Israel.
before that, Israel. I mean, legit. I mean, placing Israel after World War II in modern day Palestine, right? And did it and forcibly and everything else.
And they gave them a foothold there.
But you see, that's the problem with Cyprus.
Well, who did?
Cyprus didn't give them any benefit to what? To have air bases? They put air bases anywhere. They have in Turkey, Greece, and Cyprus now. You know what I mean? But the problem, and then what blows me away is when we're talking about the genocide one, is there weren't just British fleet in the Aegean. I heard there were other fleets. There was Japanese.
The Americans
Japanese
were not
actually.
there.
Yeah, the Japanese picked up about 25,000 of the Greeks.
Actually did.
I mean, and that is unreal. So it's not like this was just we didn't know. This wasn't we didn't know what was going on. This was, and then they held up.
It said that they put the music really loud.
Yeah, we heard that too. The massacre, I mean, it was a massacre. It was, you could say deplorable, but you hear this throughout history. it shows the degradation of humanity, personhood. Because forget God, because we don't even apply God to that, because actions, however they were done, whatever, can't apply because that's not humanistic. Send them on death marches, kill them, rape women, this is, it, you can't, when you say it, it has a bad taste. The action, or even attempt, why do you think now, when you ever see someone get arrested for attempted kidnapping, or assault, or these different things, and they have levels? Guys, it's so disturbing that we just think it's history. The problem is, it can be repeated, and we actually do see it in many avenues, even to modern day. You now look like you see it in Africa, you see Sudan, they're fighting each other too. Okay, whatever. No, I mean, the other issue too that happened was that everyone then also, I felt, especially from what fall of the end of the Cold War, towards the end of the Cold War, so 80s and 90s, the United States always had to play like a police officer. We had to go maintain, we had to go help, we had to go take care of, and this and that. And then you have other countries who's not also supporting it. So I'm not saying that we're supposed to close off. I mean, we're called to be neighbors and stuff like that, but it's sad because all we're just seeing in every country, in every world, is those lines that divide us are ever larger. They're bigger. They're more existent. And even though they don't exist in real life, because if you go to a border, there's no line there, right? It's just land. But on a map, and you see that stuff, that's how we hold true to everything. So it's sad. It's sad when I see that stuff because it just shows the pain and the fallenness of our humanity. Because whether we're Christian, we're not, you're Muslim, you're Jew, you're whatever the case would be, unless it pertains to your need or your desire or to your politicians at that time. Because again, that was I don't know who asked that question. I was Nick. I know Nick in front of me. I didn't realize that either. I forgot about that. That Venizelos actually asked for the elections and then lost.
Well, I did some reading on that, and it was the same problem as with all these other allied powers. By the end of the First World War, everybody was so tired of war
So they didn't want to.
that they didn't want to get involved, and that hurt Venizelos because there had been
So
so much fighting.
So
over
he
the
kind of,
years.
so in other words, he kind of read through the lines and understood that he wasn't going to get support regardless.
Yeah, I think he must have known it, and he ended up leaving the country right away because he was having problems with the monarchy constantly throughout his career.
Correct, yep.
Either one or the other.
Yeah.
They were never together.
Right.
But
Yeah, but you're right on a good point. I didn't get a chance to look at that too. And I kind of felt like I'm like,
The only reason the British and the French were even around is because they wanted to grab the Middle East oil.
yeah,
So
bingo.
that became their priority. Who cares about what goes?
What
on
did
in Turkey?
again, I still look back. I mean, we all say it. I mean, you talk to anyone. It was in the Greek history, the worst mistake or sadness is the fall of what we ended up losing in Western Asia Minor from Ankara, literally west. And you think about that one, what that meant for modern day, we're talking about only 100 years ago. That's why it hurts me more, not the politics or what we lost the land. I think of the people. When you think of the Bondos people, Trabzon, Asia Minor, all throughout that land, and to think about you're talking about.
But the Greeks were lucky too. I mean, we got Thessalonica, we got Epirus,
Yeah,
all of
but-
that could have.
About
They could
Constantinople.
have, they got to Thessalonica, an hour before the Bulgarian army got there,
Yeah,
and so.
Oh, they
you know,
were
so
not our friends, the Bulgarians.
They weren't allies until that moment.
But Basilius Bulgaroctonus he down to the Bulgarians.
So they
Yeah.
were fortunate too,
But
but.
you know,
yeah, agreed. And we think about that in history, but it's just, I say it in the modern context because we look at modern day Turkey, where it's a country of over 90 million people. It is at some point, obviously with Erdogan doing his, goofiness with his economics, is one of the strongest powerhouses, both industrially and peoplely, in not only Middle East, but because it also goes into Europe. That when you think what Greece could have had, now would they have developed to this level? I don't know. I can't guarantee that.
Greece
Can never
went,
know. You can never. know.
yeah,
Right.
look, when Greece went to Angara and England, France and Russia,
Yeah, but it goes back to-
wait. The Europeans, they want Greece to be that big. It was going to be a big
It could
power.
be that, or I was gonna say, well, Jim, they also, unless they, unless they did with what they did with Otto, and they created a proxy state, right? But I think you kind of hit on the head, it's the end of World War I, they're dead
I
exhausted,
think that's.
and they ate both eggs. Yeah, and they're like, what do you want us to do?
You know, France had a lot of interest in that area, but they lost 2 million people during World War II, World War I.
One,
You know, they were, you know, everybody was tired and, you know,
It's done,
you
it's
know,
just,
you think of all the troops that England lost at Gallipoli, you know, and all over Europe, everybody was just, you know,
they're all demoralized.
Yep.
At that point, so,
or tired. You know, I'm not gonna say demoralized, they won, but they were tired.
right,
then
No.
Stalin didn't become a priest. And he became.
you and Stalin, you're always stuck up on that problem,
And Hitler was going to be a painter, and they didn't accept him again. So,
you know.
but no, Europe didn't want Yugoslavia now